So the talking is right there. Okay, that will come through our cover. So you need to mute one there.
Sorry for the delay. We were expecting a couple more panel members. One for sure isn't coming. We're not sure of the other, but we do have a quorum here. So we're ready to proceed. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And could I ask amongst our panel to move and second for the adoption of the minutes for the previous meeting concerning Resort Drive? Oh, press. It's the little mouth with sound waves coming out of it.
This one.
Last time. Might just mention to everybody that please turn your mics on when you're speaking and then turn them off when you're not. It'd be much appreciated.
Anyway, Bruce so moves to adopt the minutes.
Thanks, Bruce. Seconder,
Second.
Maureen. Okay, so we'd like to hear your presentation for 285 Desperate Avenue West. So please proceed.
Thank you. I was just mentioning to Sarah that the last time I was here was for design and building of Sunrise Ridge. So it's been a little while.
Wow.
I'm really happy to be back here again. Thank you for the opportunity to present this project. What we're looking at here is a 142 purpose-built rental. We've been teamed up with the Malnar Group and partners who have about 40 years of experience, 45 years of experience in building this typology, as well as ours, WA Architects. I mean, I think it's about 40% of our portfolio is rental, purpose-built rental. So a lot of expertise coming in on this. So I'll just jump into kind of our design process and how we got to where we are with the design. We looked at one of the first things that we do is looking at the site and you know, this is a great site. It's so near everything that we need to do. It has a great walkability number to it. Things like shopping malls and pharmacy are within a 3-minute walk across the street, really. We're right next to a major bus route as well. School is about 10-minute walk away. And as you know, I mean, we are about a 15-minute walk away from the site from here. So it's a great site, and what we always look at is designing a community within a community, and you'll see that when I start going through the programming of the site. So we are bounded by Alberni Highway as well as Despard Avenue. And I'm just going to flip through those and just go to the site plan just to start walking through and just to understand the thought process of how we started laying this out. One of the things that we always like doing is making sure we activate the street. And being that we have a commercial node as well as residential, what we picked is the corner since it's an important corner. We're also looking at a SRW, so a statutory right of way in there that becomes a public plaza with some art to be followed, I guess, at a later date from the municipality. We also needed to keep this, as you know, the challenges with today's economy and with the marketing, that we have to look at ways to keep the prices down on this. And going underground for us was not an option for this type of building. So that leaves us just surface parking. And how do we not show this? We try to, screen this by the buildings themselves. And so that's what we've done. We've kind of cloistered the parking area within the back part of it. And we know that residents are going to be looking over these areas as well. So we try to green it up as much as we can. We have access to that surface parking off of Alberni Highway, but we also met with the fire department and making sure that they were comfortable having one access. They did want a second access, so you'll see that what we've done is created just an emergency access off of the southeast corner. And so this is going to be bollard and be able to remove and have the truck. And we've done the templates for the fire truck to be able to move in these areas. And the reasoning for that was that if there is something in the truck and the fire truck is there, that residents aren't kept in their parking spaces without a means of egress on it. In order for us to accommodate the 142 units on this, which is allowed by the rezoning, we need to do a little bit, jogging of the forms. We did not want to just have a straight building because that tends to be too long and too oppressive when you're looking on it from a street side of view. So we did kind of kink the buildings on it and using some of those accesses. So you'll see that along Alberni, we have this access going down and that's mimicked by a 90 on this building as well. So when you're looking at the geometries, you will be able to, your mind will pick up on the geometries from one and the other and be able to tie them together, even though they are broken out into separate pieces to start reducing the massing of this building. This is a 4-story building, and the reasoning that I said at the beginning, as we build communities within communities, is because we look at this as a microcosm of a community. And what we want to have green spaces. So we've provided urban gardens in the back area here. We've provided on Building A, if you look at right next to the breezeway, we have a multi-purpose room. This is going to be a fitness center. And then we have a multi-purpose room that spills out into the residential outdoor amenity space between the two, cloistered, kind of a courtyard feel to that area. Another challenge that we did have, and I think it was a really good solution, is how do we get commercial parking? So we have this commercial node at the corner. And how do we make sure that people that are coming in there and parking aren't completely separated from the commercial zone? And what we've created is a breezeway parkade. So we've designated these areas which meet the requirements for commercial parking as well as the loading bay. But we have a lay-by area here as well as then a breezeway connection to. And I can show you that in some images a little later. So there is a direct connection from the parking to the commercial areas. We've also, instead of looking at areas where it's the least, typically when we have underground parking, the old idea was just to find the darkest unusable space, and that's where we put our bike area. And what is happening now is we're starting to bring these up, and it's more of a lifestyle decision that we want. So we want it kind of front and center. And so what we've done is at the back of the commercial, but also facing the courtyard area, is where we're going to have the bike center for the development, and as well as also facing the parking area. And we have a substantial amount of parking. We're looking at different systems. There's a Nihilus system that we've been now using in a lot of communities, where it is instead of just the 2x6 spaces for bikes, they are a rack system that we're able to move around, and that's something that we'll talk to planning about when moving forward on this. The combination, we've done I'll just go back to the project stat sheet so we can look at some of the numbers on here. So the way we've mixed this up is doing a majority of them as 75% of them as 1-bedroom units. And these are not the tiny 1-bedroom units. I mean, they're about 680 square feet. The smallest ones are about 530, 536. And then we have 26% that are 2-bedroom units. And these are fairly large ones. One of the things that we have learned in working in Vancouver Island for years now is that we can't depend on the Lower Mainland sizes and how their marketing works. We have the ability, and we have the where we can have larger units on the island with much larger outdoor space. So your balconies are larger, and that is definitely represented in this design. So let me just go to the plan once again. One of the things that we did want to do, because we are having a lot of residential facing it. So there's two ways of creating a privacy for those terraced areas on the ground floor. And one is obviously horizontal distance from the public zone. So from sidewalks or from walkways where we have the public. So you can see that we've got a lot of green space along Despard Avenue where it separates us from that public realm and gives us the privacy. The other way of doing it is the vertical. So you'll see on these, because of the space that we had, the headroom that we needed for for the commercial spaces, usually 14 feet clear for a commercial space, that we had a lot of space that we could use on these units as well. So we pushed those up by about 2 feet, so that not only do we have the horizontal separation from the sidewalk, but now we have a vertical. So when you're sitting out on your patio, you're not fully exposed. You're up high and you have this sense of more of privacy in these areas, which I find really quite helpful in separating those two realms, the public versus the private. When we look at the indoor courtyard area, we're looking at having, it hasn't been programmed on this, but we've been in discussion of having barbecue areas, seating areas. One of the things that we find when we say building communities within communities is that we need to make happenstance meeting. So which means you will know your neighbor. You'll know whose kid that is outside. You'll know because us creating opportunities to have, you know, a seating area to talk to your neighbor, to go down to a bulletin board and be able to, you know, have things like your kids grow up, you have extra clothes, you're going to put it up there and have it so that the community, this little community right here, this micro community is able to start partaking in all that. And within our indoor amenity spaces, the multi-purpose rooms, we will be putting shelves, things where people can start putting some of their used items in there, which is great. I mean, this is now getting into a minute, but like I say, we have been working with the Molnar Group for years, and we know how these spaces work and how they actually age in place, which is great. So let's get to the, I won't take too long because I do want to get Corinne from Landscape on board on here. Part of the idea of keeping costs down on this is to be able to stack units. And what I mean is because of seismic restraints, we're always trying to get the party walls all stacked up on here and making sure that we have the same unit and plumbing and all that. That really helps in keeping the costs down in these kind of constructions. And so it comes down to how do we break these big massing down and how do we make it interesting and not, you know, a monotonous elevation along a long street. And so I will just pop up to the images. I'll just go through on the top floors of these, which is also good to note, is that we do have some nice views on here. So we're going to take advantage of that. We've done some indoor amenity space on the top floor and opened up a large area, so 1,500 square feet on both buildings in order to have that combination of, you know, the indoor space looking out over the outdoor space. These areas will be programmed with a kitchenette, with a bathroom. And also I always say the parents are in there talking, having their Chardonnay and making sure that they have an eye on the kids. And this is a great location for it. It's away from the public and you have the full glazing between the indoor amenity space and outdoor amenity space where you're able to do that. And that happens on both buildings. So we know that there are 142 units, so probably 200 residents living in this whole area. So it's good to have several of these spaces within the full design. The other thing, in order to meet our requirements, so it's good to note that we're not asking for any variances on this. So on parking, we actually have 2 extra parking on here. We are meeting all the requirements for accessibility. And in order for us to do that, we did have to go to underground in just under building B, which is the smaller building along Despard. And we have access off of the far southeast corner down into the parkade area. And this is just serving as parkade. We don't have anything else in there besides a maintenance room in that area. Okay. So let's move on to, this is building B. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it is just showing you typically we do put the 2-bedroom units on the corners because we have more perimeter wall to deal with and able to design these a bit better. But we have intermixed all of these as you will see. So let's go to materials. One of the things that we do need to do on this, and what the challenge was, is how do we break these down and make it interesting? And part of it is to start breaking it down into pieces. And so you'll see that we have these colored pieces of 4 stories that are separated by balconies by these niche areas, so that when you're looking at it, it will be broken down into smaller pieces and not be viewed as an entire large piece. That bend in both those buildings also helps that out. But the selection of materials that we needed to use, and especially for rental properties, is that we have to have it as maintenance free as possible and obviously economical and to be long lasting. So we don't, they're not going to fade. They're not going to look bad within 10 years or so. And so for that, we've picked a lot of board and batten hardy products. So a cementitious product. We've looked at metal products. So metal siding. And when I say corrugated and everyone always thinks it's that undulating one. It's come a long way now. There is the fluted corrugated metal, which is an architectural element, really modern take on that material. And then we're also looking, we're not going to be using, we're going to use wood-esque products. So I'm going to put that in quotation marks because it isn't wood. We have to look, wood is very maintenance prone. So we're looking at elements like aluminum or cementitious as well that look like wood. So to bring some of that warmth into the design as well. Vinyl windows and then aluminum storefront windows to get more of the glazing. Just kind of give you some ideas of it. We did want to have two different, so the commercial really needed to stand out, and it's going to stand out because there's going to be art eventually in there, and we're creating a plaza out in front. But we also wanted to, soften the edges with a lot of landscaping, and Corinne can talk to that in a moment. But as you see, I mean, this is if it was one full building, it is one full building. But if we did not use these elements to break it down, it would feel very large. And what I've hopefully you can agree that successfully I've been able to do is to start breaking it down into smaller pieces. And then we'll really have, because of the stair separation, it'll feel more like a townhome feel. So we'll have that activation happening to the street levels on those areas. I think the breezeway the breezeway leading to the parkade is also an interesting element on this. It really kind of highlights the entrance for the residential units for building A, but it also gives you a clear direction of connection between your parking, where your car is, and where your commercial, where you come to do your shopping. And then that kind of emphasizes that we do have a clear opening in this area. I really like how the forms do come together on this. And then you get a peekaboo area of the outdoor amenity space up on top. It's another area on here. This kind of shows then also another way of getting into that courtyard area. So where the two buildings are separated, I wanted to have a real connection between the two buildings, but yet separating them by color distinction. And so we have a green color and a blue color on these. And I really like how those elements fit together. Corinne will talk about the landscape that we've been able to create around this whole area to create private patio areas on the ground floor for residential units. We will also have wayfinding from the parking, to direct people in there. If it's your first time in there, it'll be very easy to find where you park and where you manage to do your shopping. And then these are just repetition of what we've done previously on just the elevations, just to show you. I'd never really want to show elevations because no one ever sees buildings from elevations, right? And it tends to make the building look flat and long. And so I'm just going to quickly skip through those so you don't see too much of that. With that said, I think I've covered everything I really want to. I'd like to bring up Corinne for landscape, Mystic Woods, and I'll put her drawings up on the screen. And just so you know, just go to here to go to the next one.
Which one you're pointing there? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hey, thanks, Dave. Okay, so I'm Corinne Matheson from Mystic Woods Landscape Design, and I am working with Allison Mewat, who's a landscape architect on this project, and she couldn't be here today. So, I'm sure you've looked at the drawings. What we were trying to accommodate, first of all, looking at the existing street trees that are there. And I'm not sure if a bunch of trees had died or just were not planted, but there were some big gaps within the street trees. So we have filled them in using the same species of trees. So you'll notice that there's a lot more shown on here. So we're going to keep the existing trees, except for there's one or two that do need to be moved just because of where we've now got some of the walkways coming in there. So those will get just relocated and then also additional new street trees added in. And if you look along Alberni Highway, we were really trying to get a fairly deep, quite a bit of planting in front of all those units to provide both privacy from the patio areas, but also really make it look very nice visually from the street. And all the plants on the plan have been coordinated to be either for whether they're full sun or shade or part sun, part shade. And like underneath in the little breezeway there's one planter that is completely under the building. And so those are all plants that will tolerate full shade year round. And when you get to the residential building along Despard, where the walkways are coming up, most of that planting is all on top of the parkade. So we were really limited with trees, like the trees where you see them are away enough from the actual parkade. So over top of the parkade, we used a lot of perennials. There are some taller plants that are in the planters. So the reason why we've got planters right up to those patios is to create a sense of privacy, that the planters have some height. So that'll give a sense of privacy to all those lower patios. And then the plants in front of that are going to be right on top of the parkade. They're going to be lower, but there's a nice mix of perennials, lots of different colors throughout the whole project. A lot of times, we have been doing some projects where we'll use 100% native plants, and in many projects, I feel native plants only work really well. But in this particular project, there's a few native plants, but but not a lot. But a lot of them are very drought tolerant. But we wanted to have a mix of cultivated plants as well, to add some color and some variety, and attract birds, bees, butterflies, and just make it look, because of the location where it's very central, to really make it stand out, so that it's very aesthetically pleasing. And if you look on the side, we've got some images of some fencing. So the top image is a very open fence, and that is to go around the community garden. So on the back side of that community garden, there's an existing chain link fence, which belongs to the neighbors. And I'm suggesting that stay. There's no reason for it to be changed to a solid fence because of the extensive planting in front of that. My opinion is that once we get the trees and the plants in there, that you won't see that chain link fence at all. And then we've got the community garden, and we've got the nice aluminum see-through fence around that. And then we've got the community garden, which will have planters, raised planters for anybody that wants to come out and say grow vegetables or herbs or something like that. They can do that. And there's also a little shed there, and there's a composting area and a bench. So that also makes a nice little area for the community to gather, as well as the amenity spaces. And on the east side of the property, where there's that long sidewalk, there's an existing fence to the neighbors. So that I felt, again, there's no need for an additional fence along there, because we've got already the fence there, then the walkway, and then we hit the property with a nice row of columnar trees and shrubs. So there'll be pretty much full screening to the neighbor's property with that row of trees and plants on that east side. And in the parking lot area, I've tried to get as many trees as we could in there. Some of the beds are a little bit narrow, so we went with columnar trees, not really broad canopy trees, just so that we actually, we don't overdo the soil volumes there. Let's see, what else are we looking at? And then with the art plaza, we've got some little figurines in red. Those are just placeholders at this time for, future art. I don't know what that art will be at this time, but that's likely one of the good places that the art can go. And then the next page is just showing the variety of plant material. We've got, as I mentioned, a large variety of colorful trees, shrubs, perennials. all of the plants that I like to pick are very low maintenance, even though they may look, there's a lot of different things there. These are not fussy plants. They're easy to look after, but they do provide a lot of year-round interest. And we, even around the community garden, we've got fruit trees and berries, but all ones that are very easy to look after. And I've got some images at the bottom of the benches and the compost area and the vegetable garden area beds, what those will look like. They're a different size than that, but that's the typical design. And then the next page is just itemizing and listing all the plants with their sizes and their quantities. And as I mentioned, the majority of the plants are pretty drought tolerant. We are going to provide an irrigation system as well, which is shown here. And this is just a preliminary schematic that I did of the irrigation system. I'm not an irrigation expert. So at building permit stage, we will have, you probably know him because he lives right here in Parksville, Kevin Luderbach from Irritex. He's going to be doing do you know him? Yeah, exactly. So Kevin's going to be doing the final irrigation plan. This was just sort of okay, these are going to be drip beds and those are going to be spray heads, but it'll be sent to him to figure out the whole thing. And then we'll have that on the plan. So yeah, so Kevin will be doing a proper irrigation plan. What I find with most plants is that even completely native plantings that we do, all plants need at least 2 years of irrigation to get rooted out before they are actually drought tolerant. Even drought tolerant plants require being fully rooted out. So there will be an irrigation system. And then once plants, after they've been in there on their 3rd year, then the timers can be adjusted to only water as necessary because we can have rain sensors in there. So we're certainly not going to be wasting any water. And I think that is the last plan for me. So yeah, I'll just turn it back to David. And if you guys have any questions for us.
So if you have any questions for me, we'll be happy to answer.
Maybe what we'll do is we'll actually go around and do our commentary. And if you don't mind sitting there in case a
Not a-
question comes out of the commentary, that'd be perfect.
Sure.
So perhaps we could start with you, Christine.
My name's Christine Mazouk, and I'm going to be talking mostly about where my interest is, which is the landscaping part of it. I like how many plants you've got in there. I like a lot of the things actually, and I actually like the look of the building. I like the colors and that. I love the breezeway, the outdoor cafe idea, community garden beds, lots of fruit-bearing shrubs and trees. The courtyard gathering area, of course, I'd like to see all of those larger and less lawn. I think I have a couple concerns. You have an extensive plant list. I think I counted 53 different plants on there. Only 2 are natives. And I know you mentioned that, not many natives on this one, but I question some of the other choices. I know there's already some Norway maples and we're replacing those, but they're, Norway maples on the Washington State Noxious Weed Control Board monitor list. So I just wonder if that's the ideal choice. And another one is the Chanticleer pear, which is banned in 2 states completely. It's invasive in at least 25. It may not be here yet, but I think it's just a matter of time.
I've not had any problems with the Chanticleer pear. One of the reasons, because it's a columer tree for that
Mhm.
area, we need a columer tree. I've not had any issues with that, at least for being invasive. Are you sure it's that actually
And I
species?
am positive it's that
Okay.
one. Yeah, because they're being advised to cut them down, to remove them, to not sell them.
Well, I will look into that.
Yeah,
I will look into that. The nurseries are still.
of course,
growing
they're
them.
still selling English ivy though.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have not come across that, but I can certainly look into it.
Yeah,
and see.
there's loads of choices. I just think,
There is, yeah, when it comes to columers.
maybe not as many, but
I like that one. So I mean, as long as it's.
I
but
think
if
everybody did who
if it's
planted
an
it
issue,
too.
I would certainly look into it and see about replacing it with another variety.
Yeah, and it's, as you know, how many invasives do we have, taking root and setting up storefronts in in the Pacific Northwest. So that one, Nandina's another one, not listed as invasive, but it's the berries are theoretically toxic and all
Yeah, the
that stuff.
reason, and I'm aware of that one, and the reason I figured that not being an issue is, as far as being on the busy highway like that, I can't see animals coming in and eating that. And then I'm assuming most children would not eat berries.
And I'm not even worried about the children.
You're not worried about the children. Yeah,
It's more the birds and things
yeah.
like that. And there's so many choices.
Yeah, there is. I just love the Nandina
I
as
know.
far as the year-round
Pretty.
color of the foliage.
Yeah.
Specifically, I usually find the lower varieties like
Mhm.
the Harbor Dwarf and that they don't actually produce berries. It's usually the taller species that sort of flower and
Right.
produce berries. I've actually not seen most of the dwarf ones
lower, yeah.
produce flowers or berries. It's usually grown just for the foliage.
Yeah. And they're pretty. They are.
Yeah, and they're evergreen. So I always try to get a good mixture of evergreens and deciduous plants.
Mhm.
So, instead of, just deciduous plants or perennials so that it's naked in the winter
Yeah.
time. So I like it. And then the foliage colors.
It
It's
is.
nice.
It's pretty, but I just worry there's, we've got lots of wonderful natives that I'm sure you're aware, and lots of other ones as well. I just wanted to point those ones out.
Yeah.
I like that you're adding the street trees. I like that there's lots of greenery going on. I'm pleased to see that. Just my point would be just some other and more natives. There's only 2 that I could see in there and then 1 native arbor.
Yeah.
which is
Like
the
I say, I've
Edgewood
done
wonder.
many plans where I've used just native,
Mhm,
where I feel it's appropriate.
mhm.
But with this one, I just wanted to, just start adding, not every single plan that I've been doing, just native plants.
Yeah, no,
right?
and agreed.
add
Yeah, I
some
like the
variety, add a little bit
combination,
more
but
color and interest and things.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that was the main, reason behind, and a lot of the reasons behind a lot of the choices of like having such a long plant list too,
Mhm.
is because of the different, where you've got more sun, where you've got total shade.
Yeah.
Where you've got part sun, part shade.
Mhm.
So and not wanting just a monotone throughout the whole thing, which
Yeah.
often on a lot of commercial properties, we might only pick a handful of plants and then it's just mass planting. So
Yeah.
again, trying to just make it a little bit more residential looking than
Yeah.
just commercial.
I love the idea of the berry trees and bringing in the pollinator trees and things like that. I really like that. So,
Yeah, okay, but I will look into the Chanticleer pear for sure.
okay,
And if
thank you.
that's an issue, we'll swap that one out.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the maples go, I just wanted to not have to remove the existing street trees that are already there.
Yeah,
Because, and I think we're only adding 2 more
right.
just to continue that same look.
That row. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for landscape while I'm here? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, they generally only grow less than 10 feet wide. Yeah, they're very narrow. Yeah. I try to, for the most part, with my trees, actually, especially the columnar ones are pretty much all drawn to their full-grown size or very close to it. The larger trees, I'll usually grow to or show on as about a 25 or 30-year size. So they still can grow a little bit larger over, a 50-year period of time.
So they might require some pruning.
Eventually, not in our lifetime,
Yeah,
but in your children's lifetime, maybe.
thanks.
Yeah.
Maureen,
I'm Maureen Culture. I am here basically to talk about accessibility of the building.
Maureen, could you just, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. My name is Maureen Pilcher. I am here because I look at accessibility around Parksville very seriously for anyone who has mobility challenges. I also have a design and planning background for many years, so I'll be asking you all sorts of questions and you'll be sick of me. I've noticed here that you have only basically 3 accessible, or maybe, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 accessible parking spaces in the entire building. Are there any accessible units? Have you built any accessible units in these buildings as well, or are they all for
They, not
able-bodied.
accessible units, there is adaptability to the units. So in some areas, especially the 2-bedroom units, that we do have the spacing for wheelchair accessibility
Okay,
onto this. And then we do, as a matter of fact, in all of the units where we do backing for, so that we can be putting in grab bars. And so we don't design them as it's adaptable. It's not,
Okay.
not accessible.
okay. Are there any low-income housing? Is there any low-income housing in
I
here?
think that is a better question for Dak Molnar, who is
Hi.
my client.
Yeah, so we don't have any.
Sorry.
Hi there, I'm Dak Molnar. So there's no, this is all market rental housing and that's because we weren't required to do it. And generally on Vancouver Island, we don't do non-market housing. We do just, middle income, what we call, Canadian worker and rental housing. So it's for people who are employed or have pensions and so on, but there's no affordability in this, and it wasn't requested through the CMHC financing that we received, nor was it requested from Parksville.
Okay, thank you very much. I like the idea that there's some adaptability there, that you could at least put some handholds.
Yeah,
But it would be
absolutely.
nice to see some of the ground floor units to be somewhat more accessible, because I'm noticing that you have little sidewalks. Is that correct, onto the properties along Alberni Highway, or are those just to get on the site?
That's just to get on the site. I mean, this is all, if you look at it, it is at the same level. So this I can consider accessible to the inner courtyard area.
Right.
Also, because we wanted to separate just the units along Alberni Highway, these have steps off of them in order to get that horizontal as well as vertical. So
Right.
obviously those won't be accessible, but they are accessible from the interior.
Right, but
Okay.
what I'm asking, so these little sidewalks that you've got heading up to the patios,
Yep.
could I use that to get into my unit?
you
Rather
could.
than going into the building and
Yep,
getting
and
into it? Yeah.
that's the reasoning for it, is to have.
Okay, and the
the
same
street
with the ones on Alberni Highway?
Not accessible.
No.
Because of the stairs, but yes,
But there is sidewalks into
there's
the
sidewalks
units.
connection to
Yeah,
the side.
That,
Yeah.
I just feel that it gives a much better look to the street, because you have more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree 100% on that.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. I'm happy with that. The public art, you indicated that that would be decided by the city. Was there any discussion with the city as to whether or not you were going to provide the public art as part of the
We did ask the
development?
question. It was said that would be provided by the city, not through our development.
Okay, so would you not be involved in those? Would he be involved?
I would
in the
love to be involved in
conversation
it.
regarding the public art? And were they asked to pay for it? Sorry.
So the previous development, I believe at the time of rezoning,
Yeah,
it was secured that there's a statutory right of way
right.
for a future public art piece to be installed.
And who would decide on what that is? Sorry, Sarah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I am not clear on that as far as when that would be installed, or
What it would be.
what kind of conversation would surround that.
I'm concerned because on the other side of the road, where there's a little plaza, we have a rock. That's it. It's a rock. That is the public art in the middle of, I personally think, one of the most important intersections as you come off the highway into Parksville. And I feel that if we don't take account of that now, that we may end up with another rock and nothing that's going to indicate that this is the first and only look you're going to get into Parksville at that first light before you go into town. So I'm concerned about how that corner is going to look.
So the plaza that you're referencing across the street, that was done and secured through a development permit when Quality Foods came in. When the Quality Foods Plaza,
Right.
when all that was developed. So that's where that art piece or centerpiece has come from.
Okay, thank you. I probably should have asked you these questions before, Sarah. I'm just a little concerned. there was just a couple of other questions I had regarding the parking, where you have the actual accessible parking. It seems to be that it's up at this end, right over there, the 2 parking spaces for the residents. Right there, it says restricted to residents parking only. Will there be bollards or something there to stop people coming from the commercial around that corner and using those disabled parking spaces rather than just using the one that you've got for the CRUs?
We were just
commercials?
depending on signage. And
Right.
so it would be in front saying for residents only.
Only.
And also, you know, we would definitely be using signage up on the commercial areas, commercial
Okay.
only. The thing is that when we start putting gates or separations
know.
on it, it just becomes very restrictive. We
I
did talk
agree.
about that and figuring out, you know, one of the, so if you see the dotted line on here, it
Yep.
was, that's for the parkade underneath.
Right.
And one of the issues was, you know, it is very costly for us then to design it for, to support emergency vehicles. And because the only way for us to stop that, we have to put a physical barrier on there.
Mhm.
And we didn't want to put some.
I
gates in
agree
the end.
without the
So
physical
then we had to
barrier.
design it so that it now does support
Right.
a emergency vehicle.
So can I ask then that when you do those parking spaces, that you put not only a sign on the parking spaces, but a standing sign at the end of the parking spaces that say disabled parking residents only?
Yeah, we can definitely look. at
I just feel that it's important to make sure
Probably
that people know that.
Maybe something along here where everyone turning can see this is
Mhm.
residential parking area only from
Right.
this point on.
Right, but more so in the handicap, for my thing, the disabled parking spaces,
Sure.
to
mean,
make
we
sure
can
that they
definitely look
know
at
that
that.
those are resident disabled parking spaces.
Yep.
And they're also a very, very long way from the other end of building A. If I have that 2-bedroom unit at the very, very end of that development, C1, 2-bedroom and 2-bath, that's a long way for me to go to get to my unit. From-
And we do consider that. But it is. you know,
Especially if
just-
I'm on a walker.
So it is just the size of this lot and the size of the
I know.
buildings. It isn't for us to be able to put one over there. What typically, how we deal with it is putting it as close to the elevators as possible. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that is the method to do it. We can't really separate the elevators on there, so whichever way it does happen, they will have to take the elevator, and if they do have that, unfortunately, that's just part of the geometries of how these buildings are built.
Okay. And when you were talking about the breezeway, you weren't talking about a vehicle being able to use this breezeway?
Absolutely
No,
not. It's
okay, I
pedestrian,
just
yeah.
got a bit confused there. And so for building B, the only accessible parking is underground, am I correct?
Correct. Well, I mean, we meet the requirements for accessibility parking spaces.
I know you do.
And because if you see, I mean, we used up every single inch of this. And so to be able to provide more would mean that we would lose parking spaces and would have to probably ask for a variance. And that's something that we didn't want to do. So, you know, whether these get assigned to, it will be first come, first serve, and then assigned if there are mobility issues and mobility challenged tenants in it. Those would be assigned to them.
Okay. Great, I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, there was, sorry,
It's
there
okay.
was a few questions regarding the accessibility, accessible community builder checklist. I was just wondering, here on the first page, it says, well, handicap parking spaces have a minimum width of 3.9 meters, and it's not ticked off at all. It's,
It should be. That's
Okay.
Probably just a miss
Just-
on our part.
okay, and there was a couple of others that were missing as well. What was this one? It says, will there be more? Then this is to do with the commercial. It says, will there be more than one entrance that is easily accessible for persons with disabilities? And that's also not ticked off.
It should be
So
ticked off because it
With
is
your CRUs
all
completely?
CRUs are completely 100% accessible.
Can I also ask you to put, if you're putting door openers on the CRUs, if you could also put them on the inside? there's a problem with being able to get in, or there's no problem with being able to get in, but there's often a problem with being able to get out. If you're in a store and the people are really busy and you're finished shopping and you can't get out the door, you're standing there. I know it's not normal to do that. However, if you're wanting to make Parksville more accessible and more inclusive for everyone, it would really make it a really good idea to put them on the inside, because after market, they're going to cost you $9,000 each. And eventually on CRUs, it's going to be part of the building code.
So typically we do that within the tenant improvement phase
Right.
of it. So we're right now just doing kind of the shell. And I
Right.
understand what you're saying is putting it beforehand,
Yeah.
but we don't know, typically when these are rented out, they will move doors or they will move in order to accommodate how they space plan it. So for us to put that in there, it will just, there's a possibility of it being ripped out. So we put that onus on the tenant improvement design.
Right. So maybe when you get to the tenant improvement design, it could be something that you might remember to
Absolutely.
ask them to do that, as well as in the coffee shop, where you've got the coffee shop.
Yep, and you know, I just put the coffee shop on here because,
We don't know what they're
We
gonna
don't know what
be
it's
at.
gonna be.
I know that.
but I wanted to also be able to have the opportunity to put something like that.
Right.
So be able to have that outdoor space as well. And so when that does happen, I mean, we will then start putting doorways where it makes more sense
Hmm.
to these ones. Right now, we've just put it smack in the middle of the demising spaces.
Mhm.
And so that might not be the case of where it actually goes.
I think somebody was filling this out and wasn't sure on some of these and left them blank, and it
It
was,
was me. So I apologize.
sorry. Oops. Aren't I terrible? I'm just all over it because of the accessibility, so. That's good, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
My name is Bruce Beaudry. My background is as a building technologist. So I'll be commenting on just a couple points on the building. I first want to say I just really like this development. I think you've responded to the site constraints really well.
Thank you.
The two issues I want to talk about, one is I'm a real fan of eave overhangs. Both because it's a good waterproofing detail. It keeps water away from the top of the building, and two, because parapet flashing is notoriously leaky at times, and it can damage the building. Also, I think a straight parapet is kind of an industrial look. If you put a bit of an overhang on it, it looks more residential. So that's my only comments on that. And the second thing was in relation to the development permit area guideline 1C, where it says buildings should generally be articulated to avoid large expanses of any one material. And you've done that really, really well with the residential portion. But the retail component, which is the part you see first when you drive into Parksville, is just a gray block on the corner of the building. And I wonder if something couldn't be done like the entrance to CR unit number 3 popped out maybe a foot, maybe the parapet raised a foot to make it a different element that breaks up that whole frontage of that block. If you look at the rendering on A300, the little rendering in the top right corner, it just looks like it, in that rendering, like it was just stuck on as an afterthought. Maybe it could be more articulated to make it look more like it belongs to the building behind it.
That is funny that you say that, because it was actually I wanted to keep it as one element throughout that whole thing. And we did have a step back. And the reason we don't have any more step backs is because we're right at the line of that SRW.
Yeah.
So we can't even put a canopy over that area. So it was
Okay.
kind of we were kind of backed up into the restrictions of this area.
Yeah.
But we can definitely look at starting putting up maybe some materials tied in from the wood up on top here, so that it really starts punching out this area, has a bit more interest
Yeah.
than just one solid mass.
Yeah, looking at the plan, it looks like CRU number 3 is kind of in line with the balconies behind it on the floors above. So perhaps there is an ability to, like I said, just break up that long 3 unit or four CR unit facade into something a little less monolithic. That's all.
I understand what
Yeah.
you're getting at. Yep.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the artwork is too, but that's not you. because again, it's on that corner, right? And that's the only comments I have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mary Beal. I'm a counselor with the City of City of Parksville, so I have no professional background in this area at all. I do like Nandina, although the deer ate mine, even though they're not supposed to. But so I'm encouraged to hear that perhaps the smaller ones don't have some of those the same properties, maybe don't have those berries that will attract them. I'm going to look into that. But anyway, I would like to say I would absolutely, and I didn't know what it was about this that was kind of bugging me just a little bit. And Bruce said it all like that like having something just to make it look a little less industrial, although the colors and the, you know, the board and batten sort of look, I mean, all those things are very nice, but that flat line, yeah, I just wonder if there's something there. And also with the commercial building at the front. Anyway, I just thought that those comments echoed what I was feeling, but wasn't able to articulate. I would like to say that I really like the way that raised height and the stairs going up to those ground floor units along Alberni Highway, giving it a little bit of a townhouse feel, which I think is always, it just feels more residential and more like home-like. So I think that's great. Nice to see that the ones that face Despard could be in fact accessible, you know, from on that one level. And again, off the street, I'm a big proponent of residences having a connection to the street, having a connection to the larger community. So I think that's great. I really like the variety that you proposed in the landscaping and having color and a mix of deciduous and evergreen. I think that would look very nice. And if the deer stay in the property across the road, they won't eat the daylilies. Otherwise, that could be a problem. The wayfinding, I think that looks great. Now, earlier I thought I heard that there are in fact 2 extra parking spaces. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
And
yeah.
so I can't help but wonder if it might be possible to create an additional accessible parking space for residences on that other end of it, and maybe have a little more room for some additional landscaping and soften that area. Anyway, it's just a question I throw out there because I did hear that, and I take it that you know, someone who does have some mobility issues, you know, when you have to walk that much farther, it's extra work all around, right? Sometimes that's wanted and sometimes it isn't. So I just wonder if there's an opportunity there. I'm not sure where the 2 extra spaces, as it were are.
So could I comment
Yeah,
to that?
please.
So one of the things that we do, we try to keep this obviously as close to what is required for us. And then we look at also you know, some people will still have, I know that we are all trying to move away from everyone having 2 cars, 3 cars, whatever. But there is some people that still have that. And the way that, at least that I understand how the Molnar Group, they're not just developers, but they're also property managers, and how they manage their properties is that if they need to have that extra, and we try to get some extra parking spaces so that if someone does come in and you know, they're renting a 2-bedroom, one of the largest 2 bedrooms, and they do have 2 working parents, and they do have 2 cars, that we're able to accommodate that and be able to accommodate for the rest of the units as well.
I can appreciate that. And in particular, in this area where there is, I don't think there would be any on-street parking on Despard. No,
don't
not
believe
there.
so.
And there is some limited on-street parking on Alberni, but it
Alberni,
wouldn't be
I believe
for,
that there is.
you know, it wouldn't be overnight and on, but I know there isn't on Despard. At my running group, we go along that area all the time, so fairly familiar with it. One other thing. Oh, I just wanted to mention that as well. When it does come time for public art, if understanding that's perhaps a question mark that's out there and not totally clear as to who will be working on selecting, choosing, installing. We do have a very active arts council in Oceanside and in particular based here in Parksville. And, you know, just thinking that they might be able to assist in some way with recommendations.
Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Tony Horler. My background is a structural engineer, my whole career working with architects such as yourself. So,
Sorry about that.
yeah, I know, it took a lot out of me. Just a few things. I really like the building. I really admire the amount of articulation you have in the exterior. One of the dreariest things with buildings like this is when they have a flat front for a quarter of a mile down a street.
Yeah.
I just hate that. And I really appreciate the step down in the middle to accommodate the amenity area on building A. If I had a wish list, I'd see one of those on building B. Just
There
because
is, we have one on
do
each building.
you have a break in the
Yep.
elevation?
Yep, let
Must
me,
have- must
let
have
me
got
just show
mine.
you. So. Oh, there it is. So on the top floor, we have a break outdoor amenity space with an indoor amenity space.
So that gives you the slot.
It gives you the break at the hinge of those.
Okay, and that's a similar glass canopy coming off the indoor part, I
Correct.
believe.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's some,
So there's some coverage on there as well.
okay.
I mean,
thanks
one of
for
the things
clarifying
we
that.
always, you know, I love being in BC, but you know,
It rains.
yeah, if you're going to go out in the rain and not go out in the rain, you're going to be indoors most of the time. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that was answered. Thank you. Signage at entrances. I know the primary entrances for these buildings are off the parking lot, and that's where most people are going to see them, where the elevator lobby is. I noticed that you come in off of the street, you have a thing that says Plaza Shopping or whatever. I saw the little bit of signage there. I wonder if there could be a reference to, you know, residential entrance with an arrow or something to identify that if I walked up to this project, came across the street from Quality Foods to visit somebody, I'd know where to find the entrance because I don't see how to.
and we have the opportunity. I mean, one of the things that we wanted to do is kind of separate that breezeway in building A.
Yeah.
And we have a raised planter in that area. It's a perfect, and I have that shown right here. It's a perfect area to say residential or whatever. We're calling it Parksville House, is the name of this development. And so this could be Parksville House 1 residential entrance into this area or the address in that location around. Right now we have the location at this, the wood element.
Yeah.
But we can also do the same thing for the entrance off of, if we look at, just go to the site plan. So this area here, we have the opportunity to put a bit of a monument sign at this location. So it's wayfinding and
Mhm.
it will definitely, you know, have that red flag saying entrance here.
Because that's the most common thing. You drive up and it's, how do you get into this place?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that would be great. I'd recommend that. And not much else, just one thing landscape wise. You mentioned that you're replicating the trees on, yeah, yeah. You're replicating the trees along the Alberni Highway because a number of them have died and you're going to use.
Is that the case? Have they died?
Oh, I heard you say that.
Yeah, when I went to check the site before we
Mhm.
started it, there were a number of street trees on the Alberni Highway and as well as on Despard.
Mhm.
But there were some gaps. I'm like, okay, I don't know, did they just not get planted?
Or did they get hit by
cut?
cars? Yeah, yeah. Are they hardy trees to start with, in your opinion? Yeah.
Well, the paper bark maple is one of my favorites.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I've
stunning.
got one
That's
of
the
those.
That's the one on Despard.
Yeah.
And then the Norway maples, yeah, I mean, they're generally really hard. Now, whether or not the actual irrigation systems are still working,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Would that be something that might be checked when you're putting in new
Oh,
ones?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
So we would have to have, first of all, continue a plan. I know there's a bunch of irrigation boxes already on the corner. So yeah, we would have that completely looked at and make sure that everything's working.
Yeah, because that's always the most disheartening thing when you see a boulevard tree die,
Yeah.
you know?
And the other thing is, did they even put the proper amount of soil in?
Mm-hmm.
And literally, just in the last 5 years, the soil requirement for trees has gone up like 20-fold. Back in the day, it was, you know, you recommended 1 cubic yard of soil per tree. Now it's like a small tree is like 5 cubic meters. And then a large tree is like 40 cubic meters. So
Yeah,
the amount of
yeah.
soil volume is like through the roof now. I mean, most of the places, there isn't even enough room, that much soil. So it could be that there might not even be enough soil in those trees. So I wouldn't know without doing some digging.
Okay, well, it sounds like it's
Literally.
in your plans anyway, so we don't need to
Yeah.
comment on it
Yeah,
then.
at the construction drawings, there'll be a lot more details on the plans.
Okay. Does anybody need a second go? Anything they forgot?
Sorry, I just want to know how you're going to advertise these CRUs that you have down here, because people have to know to go all the way up Alberni Highway and then turn in at the very end of the apartment building to get back to the CRUs.
I am probably not the person to ask, so I will put that over. to-
Sorry, I'm just thinking, how do I, if I'm a hairdresser and I'm there, how do I tell the people in Quality Foods how to get to my hairdressers?
Well, there'll be we'll do wayfinding. We're definitely, I'm gonna take your comments seriously about programming the retail to make it look less, right? But
Yes,
with the retailers that we have already, and there will be a coffee shop here, like I would say
Right.
95%. Are more
It's not
national,
Timmy's.
regional, they're more national, regional retailers, so they're gonna have very prominent signage for their retailers, the retails do it, and then.
why
getting in-
isn't there a Timmy's?
Huh?
Why isn't there a Timmy's here?
No, Starbucks, Starbucks.
It's not gonna be the,
No
we're gonna go with the
Timmy's.
local Vancouver Island coffee operator who we quite like and who's a friend. And then there'll be some other, but it won't, it's gonna, like, the way that we've designed the building, it plugs right into the crosswalk. And there'll be complete like connectivity and
Right,
engagement between the Quality Food Center and this. It will become part of it, basically.
Okay.
That's how we envisioned it.
was there ever any discussion about having more commercial retail units rather than apartments on this corner?
So, there
Because I
was,
believe the earlier idea was to have some doctor's offices and things like that go in to serve, because we've got the urgent care clinic, basically kitty corner to this, as to whether or not we could get some more doctor's offices and service
the-
offices in there.
unfortunately, Vancouver Island, I don't know if you know this, but
Oh,
is
we
the-
don't have any doctors? Is that what
No,
you're
you
saying?
don't have any doctors, but you're also, is the highest amount of retail in British Columbia is on Vancouver Island per capita. We are not short of retail, we are short housing. So
Okay.
when we have an opportunity to build retail, we do. We own shopping center actually here on the island. And we have owned several shopping centers on the island over the years, but this is about housing and it's not about retail. And we think this retail serves this building perfectly. And more than likely, there could be some doctors, like we have quite a bit of retail here, 5,200 feet. So you can, doctors' offices are usually 1,200 feet. So
Mhm.
it's very easy. And that's part of the reason we kept it open, because we don't know how many retailers there will be and what the demising of them will be.
Okay, so the fact that you've got 4 here, it could turn into 1.
It could be one, it could be three, it really depends. And that's why we sort of just kept it flexible,
Okay,
because we already have some very good interest from some really great tenants that will basically help across the street. And there'll be connectivity between them. Okay.
good. Thank you very much.
So I've just made a little brief summary, like I tend to like to do, and see if the panel agrees with these points. I think I heard about 5. One would be a signage enhancement for better direction finding, which I think was covered in sort of several aspects. A reconsideration of the plant list with regard to invasive or toxic species. Won't be particular about that. Additional accessible parking if possible. Additional articulation of the retail front, and then a consideration of the parapet detail. That is an interesting one, because it is one of the worst things you see is when the flashing leaks, as Bruce points out, and you get these black stains down the front of your hardy panel or whatever the material is. So some thought to that would be
Oh, yeah. We have part of the design group that comes, we always have an envelope engineer involved on it. And just the redundancies that now come because of the years of leaky condos and all that. I mean, these now are, they have two systems, and we're always looking at water ingress issues.
They used to primarily rely on sealants that broke down after a short number of years, right? And, like I say, it was just horrible.
Overkill for building these things.
Yeah.
Really tight.
Well, I imagine just the fact that Bruce had mentioned possibly a small overhang or a whatever, but we'll leave it with you just as a recommendation. And if you feel satisfied that steps you're taking.
So we can
address
definitely
that.
look at that, but one of the strategy was to keep it as clean
Clean,
lines
yeah.
as possible. And to be able to, like, it has gone through envelope engineer right now, and we do have an in-house sustainability person. So we look at these, how the building is located on the site. And, the heat increase to those units. And if that is the case, and it's been brought up at early stages, then we will put shading elements, which also serve but I really do want to keep the simplicity of this and those elements kind of marching along on those areas.
Okay, so we'll just mention the detailing to review, and that's certainly in your court. So just to reiterate those, the signage enhancement, I believe, would be in the Area 3 guidelines, item 4. The landscape with the species that we would just like you to give some thought to would be section 2. By the way, that was 4A, that previous one. This would be 2.5. They're letters actually, aren't they? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Yeah, that's drought tolerant, but sometimes these don't fit like a glove, but that's the point that we're making, is just to consider if any of those are not applicable. Additional accessible parking would be 6, and I'm just going to say 6A for that one. And then the parapet detailing is really an architectural feature under item 1.
No.
That's articulated. They did a great job of that. Yeah, and we're going to get that one. The which? Yeah, yeah, without a commentary. Yeah, it's just section. Yeah. Yeah. And then the last one would have been the additional articulation of the retail front. So that would be architectural form. And I believe that would be 1A. Yeah, make that 1C. Sorry. Does that, yes, Mary?
Thank you, Tony. I don't think it's something that has to go on there, but I did have 2 other thoughts that I wanted to share. One, picking up on something that Maureen said earlier at the entrance to the area with the parking area, that it's a residence only. Was there any thought to something like a speed hump or just something there that might further alert people to
That's a good idea.
a bit of a change with the flow? Sometimes signs are missed, and so that was one thought that I had.
We could look at a physical change in height
Yeah,
as well as maybe even a color or something.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and a hump rather than a bump.
Yep.
If you're a cyclist, the bumps are so bad, or and anything. And the other thing I did want to mention, thank you for mentioning that the irrigation will include going into the planting in the breezeway. I've unfortunately seen in the past a plan that came forward some time ago where a breezeway and had these plantings and what it was going to look like, but I gather it was never irrigated. So of course it's just, dead dirt, so I'm pleased to see that you'll look after that. Thank you.
Oh, it's for the bikes. Yeah, that's a good point. It's not gonna be for parking. Yeah, we'll change it to bike parking, commercial bike parking.
So does that sound like we caught the big major points there? So could somebody move that we recommend those remarks and that this be accepted in principle with the recommendations that we have made?
Sure, I can recommend that.
Thank you, Bruce. Seconder,
I can second it.
Christine, and somebody move, we adjourn the meeting.
So moved. There you go.
Oh, thank you, Maureen. Second. Got to get your name in the highlights here. Bruce? So thanks very much. Nice
Thank you very
building.
much.
That was pretty minimal compared to some of the projects we see.
Really appreciate it. It's nice to be back in Parksville.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
That's all my. Oh, okay.